In the meetings, we'll be following the Novalco format, which hopefully everybody has pulled the current handouts off the website so that they can follow along. And this program has been widely used for a few decades now. The basic weekly format will be a combination of readings, directed discussion, and homework assignments and homework review as we start going forward. But we'll just take a moment now just to have a moment of silence to remember those of us in and out of the rooms and still struggling. And then we'll follow that by the set aside prayer. Great. Thank you very much. So the set aside prayer, the simple version that I have is just God, set aside everything I think I know about myself, recovery, you and the 12 steps that I might have an open mind and a new experience. Amen. Um, just as a quick review of last week, we started with the initial handout that we got, which included definitions, explanations, mottos, some of the spiritual tools, and a bit about the Novalco history. If anybody didn't get those handouts, they should be available online now on the AAA amend or AA amend website.
MEND.com. Thank you, Amy,
Website.
for all the time you've put posting the information. It is there if you scroll down under homework 2025.
Yeah. And we also talked about some of the basic principles, which are honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, the basic how this works. And that they're the foundations of making progress in this. If you have honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, it's all possible. We also we're going to just have a quick read through how it works. And John, I'm not sure, do you have that down on your end?
How it works, yeah, I have that here.
Do you mind reading this quick?
For John Alcoholic. How it works from chapter 5 in the big book. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves a simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunate. They are not at fault, they seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear three pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought.
Awesome. So one thing I wanted to say about how it works is in my experience over the years, it's amazing how many people come into meetings and then they ask what the program is. Like, what's your program? And like, how does this work? And yet we read how it works every night. You know, it's kind of a clue. If you
Some of
you
us
want
learn
what we
simpler
have,
than others. I had to
you gotta-
read that every night for 6 months.
yeah, it took a while for Jill to kind of buy into the fact that there was maybe something meaningful in what we read. Anyway, it's outline of a simple set of instructions laid out to effect a psychic change in us, or more simply put, it's to create a change in our attitude towards life. You know, if I've heard a lot of people that the person that starts the steps, you know, when the person that comes into the room and is looking at step one is not the same person that's sitting there when they've managed to get to step 12, if you sincerely applied yourself to the work. And that's what we hope for everybody here on the meeting. And we wish you nothing but success.
And two things that jump out that really need to be stressed on how it works that I didn't hear the first 6 months. Rigorous honesty. And that includes being honest with myself for the first time, because I came in here with reservations and lots of rules of what I was going to do and not do. And the other is to let go. Absolutely. We got to come all the way in here if we're going to make this thing work. No reservations.
Awesome. Thanks, Jill. So the other thing we did last week is we read through the preface and the forwards to the big book, which provided us some insight into the roots and the growth of Alcoholics Anonymous, how it went from a few people to a movement that now numbers in the millions and has saved millions of lives. And, the big book, can't stress it enough, is a textbook. It's not a novel. It's not, like the Bible. It's actually a set of instructions. And when it says things like, this is how we precisely moved forward, or upon awakening, those are instructions. So when you're reading through it, try to pick that up and pay it some heed when it gives you some clear directions. I think we're just going to take a moment to go around the room around the screen here, just introduce yourselves again and just say where we're from. And Jill's going to take a little attendance. So
Okay. Yeah, my name's Jill. I'm a grateful.
Bill, will you pause the recording through this
Oh, good
part
idea. Yeah.
and then pick it back? I'll read reading.
Okay, so Jill and I are about to read through step 1 in the Little Red Book, which, as discussed, is a guide or a helpful guide that even the Novalco series has picked up over the years and shows up a couple of times during the review of the steps. So we'll start off here, and I'll just start it off, and then I'll pass it on to Jill partway through here. Step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Men and women who are allergic to alcohol, who compulsively persist in drinking, eventually become sick from a unique illness. This illness is known to medicine as alcoholism. It is unique in that it adversely affects us physically, mentally, and spiritually. Step 1 briefly portrays the pathetic enigma of uncontrolled drinkers who have acquired this illness over which they are entirely powerless. and I can certainly attest that that's where I ended up. Drinkers of this type consider alcohol a physical requirement. They gradually increase its consumption at the expense of proper intake of nutritious foods. This practice induces physical and nervous disorders, decidedly detrimental to their comfort and health. I don't know if anybody else out there can identify with this, but for a while I just stopped taking in calories through food because I knew I was taking enough through my mixes and my alcohol that something had to be cut, and it wasn't going to be my alcohol.
And that's often why we crave sweet things so badly when we stop drinking, is the majority of our calories are coming from alcohol, ethyl alcohol, but there's a huge sugar content. And it's also why a lot of us have to get checked out for adult diabetes, which we can form, and gastro issues. So these are things that this is part of the physical damage it's talking about in the first paragraph, let alone the mental and the spiritual.
Yeah. This practice includes physical and nervous disorders decidedly detrimental to their comfort and health. The study of step one will be largely devoted to the physical illness of alcoholism. And the reference here is to read the doctor's opinion. And if it's part of the reading for this week, but it might not hurt to read through it now. If maybe Michelle, are you the doctor's opinion? Let's see if Annie and Michelle will pick it up and just split it up for here.
So I was trying to get that online.
Page 23 or XX. I.
From these observations?
Or the doctor's opinion?
Oh, mine's not 23.
No, XX.
Eclipse me.
Roman 23.
Roman 23.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, I'm Michelle, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Michelle?
Michelle?
We of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. Convincing testimony must surely come from the medical men who have experience with sufferings of members and have witnessed our return to health. A well-known doctor, chief physician in a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcohol and drug addiction, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. To whom it may concern, I have specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. In late 1934, I attended a patient who, though he had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic type I have come to regard as hopeless. In the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. This has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered. I personally know scores of cases who were of the type with whom other methods had failed completely. These facts appear to be of extreme medical importance. Because of their extraordinary possibilities of rapid growth inherent in this group, they may mark a new epoch to the annals of alcoholism. These men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. Very truly yours, William D. Silkworth, M.D.
Annie, do you want to pick it up from there?
Sure. Where are we reading from?
To the end of the page.
Okay. Annie, alcoholic.
Hey, Annie?
The physician who, at our request, gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows. In this statement, he confirms that what we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe, that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as its mind. Sorry, it's just so large, this text. It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life, that we were in full flight from reality, or we outright were outright mental defects. These things were true in some extent, to some extent. In fact, to a considerable extent with some of us, but we are sure, oh my gosh, but we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may, of course, mean little, but the ex-problem drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. Though we work out our solution on the spiritual as well as the altruistic plane, we favor hospitalization for the alcoholic who is very jittery or befogged. More often than not, it is imperative
Yeah.
that man's brain be cleared before he is approached, as he has then better chance of understanding and accepting what we have to offer.
John, do you want to pick it up, please?
Please.
John alcoholics.
John.
The doctor writes, the subject presented in this book seems to me to be of paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction. I say this after many years' experience as medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction. There was, therefore, a sense of real satisfaction when I was asked to contribute a few words on a subject which is covered in such masterly detail in these pages. We doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics, but its application presented difficulties beyond our conception. What with our ultra-modern standards, our scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge. Many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book came under our care in this hospital, and while here he acquired some ideas which he put into practical application at once. Later, he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients here, and with some misgiving we consented. The cases we have followed through have been most interesting. In fact, many of them are amazing. The unselfishness of these men, as we have come to know them, the entire absence of profit motive, and their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one who has labored long and wearily in this alcoholic field. They believe in themselves and still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death. Of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed from his physical craving for liquor, and this often requires a definite hospital procedure before psychological measures can be of maximum benefit. We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all, and once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves, if they are to recreate their lives. If any feel that as a psychiatrist directing a hospital for alcoholics, we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand with us a while on the firing line, see the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children, Let the solving of these problems become a part of their daily work and even of their sleeping moments. And the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. We feel, after many years of experience, that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented, unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stage of spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. Pass. Sorry.
Gary alcoholic.
Gary.
On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. Men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal, "Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me." I don't know if anybody else can identify with that, but I was in that state. Faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. Although he gives all that is in him, it is often not enough. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. Through the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, we physicians must admit we have very little impression upon the problem as a whole. Many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach. And I think we're going to stop there on the doctor's opinion because it's a fairly long read. But I highly recommend that you either read it over the next week, it's part of the homework, or if you've got everything AA, the big book is all done as a we call it audio book. So you can whether you're driving or trying to sleep or
It's also recorded
walking your
on the
dog.
website.
Yeah.
Under the Sunday night readings, from page numbers, doctor's opinion is there, as are all the first 6 chapters.
Yeah.
So you've got several sources to listen to it if you're having trouble just reading it.
One thing I wanted to say about doctor's opinion is, a lot of people have a problem with the idea of it being, alcoholism being a disease. And I know when I first came in, I couldn't understand how they could call it a disease. I just thought I had a mental obsession. Well, I didn't even know it was a mental obsession. But somebody in one of my first meetings explained the disease to me, and he said, break it down and make it dis-ease. You're ill at ease. And that was exactly how I felt. I was always uncomfortable in my own skin. And it wasn't until somebody explained it to that way that I could totally identify with it. I was uncomfortable in my own skin without something to help me affect a change. And like for most of us, my initial solution was alcohol, and that worked for me for a lot of years. But like most of us, probably everybody that's on this meeting, at some point it stopped, and I wasn't getting the relief that I needed. It wasn't working. It wasn't solving my problems. It was just making them worse. They were always there when I sobered up. So
Works
I
till
had
it
to
doesn't.
change. Yeah. All right. So we're going to pick up from in the Little Red Book, and just starting back where we left off. Few alcoholics have given their drinking problem much intelligent study. That was definitely me. They reluctantly agree that they must quit, but keep right on drinking. Severe hangovers make them realize that physical illness plays a part in their discomfort, but they resort to a little hair of the dog that bit them and continue into a new binge or finally taper off, suffering much physical and mental anguish. The alcoholic lives in a compulsive slavery. Alcohol is the only means that makes life bearable and quiets the alcoholic's jittery nerves. Existence under such circumstances soon makes the alcoholic's life unmanageable.
I just want to comment there. If you guys are looking at this first step and you go back and look at it, there's a dash there. It says, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, dash, that our lives had become unmanageable. So what this is the first time I've ever seen this written this clearly in the Little Red Book, where it's saying right there, unmanageable lives directly as a result of your drinking. So it's not just that life is unmanageable because of the economy and we're not getting on with our partner or whatever, but it's directly related to our drinking. So that, I think that paragraph is really strong, and we've made alcohol our higher power and it's made our life unmanageable. Very clearly stated there, no doubt about it.
Thanks. Correction of this condition is a serious problem of immediate concern. Recovery is possible for alcoholics who honestly want to stop drinking. Unmanageable lives and the physical illness induced by compulsive drinking can be arrested. We must have only a conscious need and a desire for help. The founders of Alcoholics Anonymous identified the physical factor as a part of their powerlessness over alcohol. This physical factor was given first consideration in their new recovery program. In the 12 simple steps, they outlined a way of life for daily practice that restored them to physical health and contented sobriety. Daily practice was the key to success. By trial and error, they designed a simple philosophy to arrest alcoholism. It embraced knowledge of many vital facts. Recovery is possible, but a cure cannot be effected. The man or woman who has become an alcoholic cannot become a controlled drinker. They have developed a serious illness, and their lowered physical and mental resistance is powerless. Control over alcohol is gone. And I can check all those boxes. Continued drinking now brings only physical illness and insane behavior. They are truly sick people.
And that's commenting on the progressive nature of it. You know, we could handle it until we couldn't. So this is talking about the physical illness, but it's also now talking about our mental illness that's coming along with it. And now we've lost all control. The switch is gone.
I don't know about you guys. I think I mentioned it last week. Most alcoholics are overly sensitive in nature, but usually have a very high pain tolerance, and it's not a good combination. And that was definitely something that suited me. Yeah. Experience has proved that recovery from alcoholism is contingent on, and there's a list of 12, surprise, surprise, 12. So experiences prove that our recovery from alcoholism is contingent on, number one, having a sincere desire to stop drinking. 2, admitting and believing in our innermost hearts that we were powerless over alcohol. And that was my sticking point for a long time. I was pretty sure I was an alcoholic, but I still held on to the faint hope that one day I might be able to drink like a normal person. And it wasn't until I hit my bottom and that insane thought was finally squashed that I was finally open to try something different. Number 3, looking upon alcoholism as a fatal, incurable illness involving the body, mind, and spirit.
3 parts
Back
again.
to
They're
3
stressing
parts,
it.
yeah.
Yep. Body, mind, and spirit.
Number 4, considering ourselves as patients in AA for treatment. 5, identifying alcohol as a poison rather than a beverage for us. 6, making it our business to understand how alcohol affects us. Number 7, realizing we are alcoholics. Number 8, learning, practicing, and having faith in the 12 steps of the AA program. 9, believing we can arrest our alcoholism, but we can never drink normally again. 10, gaining a layperson's knowledge of how alcoholism works and affects our health and our well-being. 11, using this knowledge and understanding of our illness not only to gain sobriety, but to guard against the danger of returning to drinking. And 12, doing this partially by keeping in our minds a mental picture of the unmanageable life alcohol demands from us and our powerlessness over it. The layperson's view and understanding of alcoholism are simple ones based on known facts and backed up with his or her experiences and the knowledge gained from other alcoholics. The following discussion of alcoholism briefly covers the facts necessary to a beginner. The beginner's understanding will naturally increase as he or she makes the Alcoholics Anonymous program a way of life. And there's something I wanted to stress there is that something that I learned in the rooms as well, is what wisdom is. Wisdom is a combination, the way it was described to me is a combination of knowledge combined with experience. And like a lot of us, I had a lot of knowledge. I looked up and researched alcoholism, but, self-knowledge on its own was not enough. It wasn't until I got into the rooms and started talking to other people that had, felt the way that I did and acted the way that I did, regardless of whether it made any sense or not, that it started to make some sense. I could what they said resonated with me. And I thought, okay, if it can work for them, then maybe it can work for me. So, like I say, knowledge on its own doesn't work. Experience is just bad things that we do along the way. But when you combine the knowledge, of what this disease is all about with the experience of others that have gone before you, you can finally start to understand what it's actually all about. And as I say, that from what I've been told is what constitutes wisdom. So onwards here, it says, nature has provided each normal man and woman with a physical body designed to withstand the rigors of a strenuous daily life. A healthy person can endure great hardships under the most unfavorable circumstances as long as he or she receives oxygen, water, balanced nutrition, regular elimination, proper rest, and relaxation. The human tenacity to retain that spark of life is persistent as long as we follow these standards. When one of these factors is permanently neglected, deficiencies will eventually occur, such as physical problems, nervous tension, and neurotic conditions. Our nervous systems will upset mental balance, and we will eventually die from lack of rest and nourishment. Alcoholism stimulates such a condition and further complicates it by a daily intake of toxic poison alcohol. And if you have a hard time identifying alcohol as a poison, anything can be poisonous taken into vast quantities. People die of drinking too much water. It's not what it is, it's how much you take in a lot of cases. And Jill, did you want to pick it up from there?
Well, I just want to emphasize the fact that we weren't designed to process ethyl alcohol. And the amount we take in, if you're honest about how much you take in and the stuff we put in our bodies, our systems independently are designed by Mother Nature to be perfect. And then you start throwing a lot of ethyl alcohol into it. And the science has proved we have an enzyme on top of it that doesn't process it the way other people do. Also, we crave it. We crave it. It's doing damage, but we have this mental obsession and this physical longing. That is not normal, I have learned. So the thing to remember on the other side of it, and if you're in your first few months and you're just getting through your detox, remember that it takes time, and this is certainly my experience, for our finely balanced systems to go back into balance. I was, after detoxing, suffered a number of other physical things that were masked by my constant drinking and, in my case, opiate use. So don't be surprised as you get well. There's a period required to get your life back in balance. We didn't get this sick and poison our system in 5 minutes. It doesn't take 5 minutes to get better again. So just accept that and go with the flow, and it gradually you go back into a state of ease, mentally and physical. Okay. Alcoholism stimulates such a condition and further complicates it by the daily intake of our toxic poison, in this case, alcohol. The bloodstream and body cells are first affected, then the brain. Yeah, we destroy our cerebral cortex impulse control. Fact, impulse control. That's why we keep drinking. We don't have that. As we compulsively substitute the poison alcohol for the nutrition, like Gary was saying, you drink rather than eat. This poison irritates the brain and it finally breaks down nature's defensive barriers. Physical deterioration is sometimes rapid, but in most alcoholics, addiction is acquired over a period of years. That was my case for sure. So it is only in the later stages of the illness that acute physical breakdown is apparent. Our bodies are amazing things, what the abuse they'll put up with, but there comes a point where it just can't take it anymore. This breakdown is not apparent to us, to the alcoholic. We're unable to visualize the hazards of our own mental or physical condition. Alcoholism has gradually inhibited the alcoholic's power to discern between social, normal, and pathological, the way we drink. A marked personality change, influenced chiefly by negative thinking, now drives the alcoholic to heavier drinking. Pour me, pour me, pour me another drink, right? Friends and relatives become concerned over this change in personality. It's like a switch goes, right? But the alcoholic precludes self-criticism and becomes at odds with a normal environment. We isolate, we retract from society. Recovery from alcoholism, the illness was responsible for our unmanageable lives, can only be accomplished when we stop drinking and return to a permanent, regular, balanced diet that completely eliminates alcohol. So paying attention to what we eat, that's been critical to my recovery. There is no shortcut. And if you're an alcoholic like me, you're always looking for the shortcut, right? I have to feed this body of mine. There is no shortcut, no substitute, no other way out for the alcoholic. We can't drink. It's off the table. Controlled drinkers have no trouble conforming to this procedure. But alcoholics who have lowered their physical resistance and exhausted their nervous systems should have medical help in starting rehabilitation. And what we just read in the doctor's opinion emphasized that we get medical help to get through that initial case of the jitters. Don't do what I did. I darn near killed myself detoxing by myself.
I was just going to add on that. One thing that we did when I did my first working step group is we asked everybody to just go to their family doctor. Like we were all new in recovery. There weren't any of us that had been around and been through the steps a few times. So we were all pretty well fresh off the street, if you want to call it that. And they said, go to your doctor and be honest with them if you've never been honest before, and tell them how much you drink and get them to give you a full physical and find out, where you're starting from, what your benchmark is, what kind of possible physical maladies you might have. And in my case, like a lot of us, my liver enzymes were off the charts, and it was a bit distressing, and it was also kind of funny because, like I say, I loved honesty by omission. Whenever I went to the doctor, you know, she wouldn't ask and I wouldn't tell. Like if she didn't ask me about my drinking, I wasn't going to offer it. We talked about the symptoms that we were dealing with at the time, but you know, I was actually kind of surprised when I did tell her because she really didn't understand the program and didn't really understand alcoholism to the point where, you know, we do today. She basically said, "Oh, well, then you probably shouldn't drink so much." Not super helpful, but most doctors did. I know her for a fact. She learned a lot along the way, deal with me. But one of the beautiful things was, for me, anyways, I was really lucky because I went back probably about a year later, and all of my enzyme levels, everything that was out of balance, was back to almost perfect readings. And I know a lot of people that have pushed it past that point, don't necessarily get that opportunity, but I was blessed with a good physical recovery as well. And, I didn't end up with cirrhosis. I didn't end up jaundiced. I didn't end up with some of those things that some of us do. But it's only by the grace of God. There's no reason why. And especially if I'd pushed it a little longer, I might have ended up in those situations as well. So if you haven't done it already,
Go to the doctor.
go to the doctor, be honest with them and find out where you're at now. And then, you know, like everything else in this program, at least you know where you're starting from and what you need. Yeah.
And ask for a full blood workout. One of the things to pay special attention is there are two tests, your iron and your ferritin. And a lot of alcoholics are anemic. I got 3 infusions of iron and I felt like superwoman. And I've never had to have supplementary. A lot of us alcoholics don't absorb iron through capsules or vitamins through capsules from some of the gastro damage we've done. So when I had the infusion of the iron, my goodness, I have been anemic most of my life because I didn't eat properly. I ate the wrong foods or not at all, went in through that whole cycle, or I was feeding it with alcohol. So do get your iron checked. The number of people, there's a blog on it on the website. It's called The Weighty Matter of Iron. Make sure you read that and get your iron tested and ask for an infusion. If you're below mine, now I'm holding it like it's amazing. All right. So we're going to carry on here. Many members who ignore the importance of their physical well-being as an asset to recovery. You got to feel good, right? Will fail to arrest their alcoholism. Some may recover, but they slow the process if they do not feel well physically. And that's why we get exercise too, right? Motion is lotion. We feel better about ourselves. We believe all alcoholics should be hospitalized upon request with help with the Alcoholic Anonymous program. So if you are really jittery and really suffering from withdrawal, get medical help. This is not presently possible in all cases, so the members who cannot receive hospital care should consult a doctor who is skilled in the diagnosis and treatment of alcoholism. The importance of this advice cannot be overemphasized. The alcoholic is a sick person who does not realize it and wishes to minimize his or her physical condition. This should not be allowed by the older members. They should point out the need for a complete physical checkup and see that the new member gets it. Go to the doctor. Those who neglect the simple precaution of receiving ethical medical care are less apt to effect a speedy recovery from alcoholism. Okay, so jumpstart your program. Go to the doctor and be honest. The alcoholic whose life has become unmanageable from uncontrolled drinking is taking a serious step in identifying with our program and attempting to make it a way of life. The alcoholic's future security depends on the successful attainment of AA as a way of life. Got to change our ways. Alcoholics cannot allow impaired physical well-being to detract from your chances of recovery. Therefore, they must safeguard their health, as poor health may return them to drinking. We need to help ourselves. New members will benefit by investigating the various phases of alcoholism that apply to their cases. It is progressive, and it's progressive physically too, in our liver state and all the rest. They must admit they are alcoholic and discuss their problems with the older members who are always willing to offer advice and help. If you can't be honest with your doctor, get honest with one of us. It's a good starting point. Learn to see in alcoholism a diseased condition of the nervous system due to the excessive use of alcohol. We're sick. We're not bad people. Reflect upon your powerlessness over this sickness. Learn a number of the tests in the medical and psychological field that identify alcoholics. There's the brilliant pamphlet in AA answering the questions. Admit you can't take it. Just admit it. Consider your inability to take it or leave it alone. You've lost the choice. I lost the choice. Remember your inability to leave alcohol alone in the face of impending disaster. I could drink at anything. It didn't have to be a disaster. If you drink, it definitely marks you as an alcoholic. The necessity of a drink the morning after is common to most alcoholics. And if not yet, it's soon.
It's a yet.
It's a yet. Yeah, but
Yeah, but I don't drink in the morning.
not
Yeah.
yet. There are many other identification of the alcoholic. Make it your business to learn some of them. The founders of Alcoholics Anonymous understood that members have to realize their physical illness and receive medical help before they can concentrate on the spiritual requirements that are necessary for recovery. Physical health is a necessity, but it is only the first step in recovery from our alcoholic illness. So this is a summarization of what we've just said. Recovery from alcoholism first involves a layperson, an average person's knowledge of this illness and a conscious need. We need treatment. There is no mystery about it. Addiction to alcohol has set up a poisoning within our bodies. Compulsive drinking, that's when we're powerless, naturally will follow. Our lives become unmanageable. The first step of recovery is to recognize our alcoholism and admit our physical illness. Why does this help? Well, it makes us honest in evaluating our true physical condition, like looking in the mirror and really getting honest. It makes us humble and willing to stop the alcoholic rationalizations. It awakens us to our need for hospitalization before entering AA and for medical care afterwards. Why are we sick? Can we be cured? Real alcoholics are sick from poisoning acquired by substituting alcohol for food and rest. Yeah, that was me. I ran on wine, but it was vintage, so that was okay, right? Physical health can be reasoned, but no cure will permit us to become controlled drinkers. So what's the treatment? Admitting our alcoholism, willingness to accept medical treatment, proper diet, and relaxation, belief we can recover, daily practice of our AA program. So now we're going to talk about drugs. Occasionally, some of us have resorted to drugs for physical comfort or to induce sleep. Yes, that's me. That's got my name on it. This practice is out. Okay, let's be clear about this for all alcoholics. Anything mind altering, guys, except those rare cases where an ethical medical practitioner skilled in the treatment of alcoholism prescribes and supervises such treatment. Okay, I got to stop there because I'm the greatest BSer of doctors.
Yeah.
Like I had a pill for anything, you know? And it's like the answer was in the bottom of a bottle. Take this, it'll make you feel better. Oh, this will work. Want to go here, then I want to go there. I couldn't be here. That was boring. So I have to accept, and if you're coming in here, we're not California sober, right? I tried that.
Well, actually, I was going to talk on that too, because
I got one paragraph and then we'll go into that. Want to do that?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, so we live the AA program to develop normal, well-integrated personalities that exclude the use of narcotics and alcohol. Drugs prevent this change in personality. They warp our thinking. They too quickly become a substitute for alcohol and are decidedly habit-forming for most of us.
Perfect.
Yes.
That reaffirms what I was just about to say. I don't know about anybody else on the screen or in the room, but I started smoking pot when I was a kid. I was definitely multidisciplined. It was much easier to get pot when I was younger than it was to score alcohol on a regular basis. So by the time I was in my late teens and early 20s, I was smoking pot alcoholically. And when I put it aside, my drinking definitely took off. And I just didn't have the capacity to handle both on a regular basis. But, it didn't matter what I was using. I was substituting one for the other. And by the time I found my way to Alcoholics Anonymous, it took a lot of years, but when I found my way in here, I totally understood that it didn't matter what it was. If I was using it to alter the way I felt, or to hide my feelings, to numb my feelings, then it wasn't good for me. I wasn't being sober. So, if any of you are struggling with that, really take some time to evaluate why you're using these other substances, and ask yourself, am I really trying to be sober? Can I be sober if I am still using something else to substitute for alcohol? So
I
that's
got to
kind of my
jump
two
back
bits.
in here on this one because this was definitely my rabbit hole. As soon as I stopped drinking, I turned to whatever I could get. And if it was prescription, then it was okay. Well, I could BS any doctor into giving me just about anything. I had bottles after bottles up here, sleep awake, and I lived on those. It was just a replacement. And then food did the same thing for me, right? It's called cross addiction or over exercising or doing anything to the extreme. The bottom line is anything we're doing, and this is emotional sobriety too, to not feel. That's what we've got to think about, right? We're drinking for oblivion. We're drinking to not feel. We're drinking for that effect of not having to deal with life on life's terms. At least that's my experience. I'd take anything.
Yep.
True admission.
All right. I was going to say, do you want to cover off on some of the points on the sheet there?
Yep.
This one?
Okay. Okay, guys. Oh, sorry, a little jumbled. Okay. So these are we're now going to go over the
Couple
key
keys,
points.
yeah.
Okay. These are the ones, the takeaways
Bit
that
of a summary as well.
yeah. Key one, recovery is possible. Okay. It is possible. I'm living proof. Progress is limited only by your hang-ups, your inhibitions, or your lack of desire. If you just don't want it, right?
Goes right back to where we started with the how, honesty, openness, open-mindedness, and willingness. Are you willing to affect change in your life?
Absolutely.
Simple.
Okay. Key number 2, 12 simple steps outline a pattern for living a contented sober life. And that's where emotional sobriety comes in, contentment. It's not white knuckling it, it's embracing it and actually being happy about it.
One of the things I was going to say is, I think I mentioned last meeting as well, but I discovered in here that there's a real difference between trying not to drink and learning to live sober. I spent a lot of years out there trying not to drink, but that's focused on the problem. What we're trying to do now is learn how to live sober, which is a completely different thing. You're not focused on the problem, you're focused on the solution. And yeah.
Yeah, and it says daily practice is the key to success. We don't have to get freaked out about this. Okay, it's one day at a time. We just do the same thing. We get up, report for duty, and do it all over again. One day. Key 3, an alcoholic has a negative personality, which results in heavier drinking. Yep. It's a depressant. It's not a surprise that we're negative personality. I was on antidepressants too. Came off those when I stopped drinking. That was turned out to be the biggest problem. Key 4, there's no shortcut or easy way for the alcoholic. Darn, we like shortcuts.
You'll hear it over and over again. This is a simple program, but it's not easy. And it's simple to read it, but it's not easy to take the time to reflect on yourself and, ask yourself those questions. Do I really want this? Do I want to be sober? Do I want to change in my life? Am I willing to go to any length to get it? Simple questions, but not necessarily easy to answer if you're an alcoholic of my type anyways.
And this is the heart of the matter. Okay. Key 5, your future security as an alcoholic depends on your successful attainment of the AA pattern of living. Okay. This is a program for how to live your life. Key number 6, Reflect upon your powerlessness over your illness. Just give into it, admit it. Like, it's bigger than us. It's bigger than us. And if I let it, drugs and alcohol will be my higher power. And that's the end of me. I don't want to die. Key 7, admit that you can't take it safely. I take a drink and the drink takes me. All bets are off.
I don't know if you've all heard this saying, but one that struck me and I really liked was if you step in front of a locomotive, or say if you step in front of a train, it's not the caboose that kills you. You know, it's the locomotive. It's that first drink that sets you off and makes it you know, something you just can't deal with. And the other thing that was really important that I didn't understand, until it was explained was you're usually sober when you pick up the first drink. You know, it's not your alcoholic. It's not. You make a conscious decision to pick up the drink, knowing where it's going to take you, and that was my case. You know, I like to say that I was suffering from fatal optimism. You know, I was convinced that maybe one day I might be able to drink like a normal person. Maybe this time it might be different. You know, and that's the kind of thinking that has to be squashed. And, you know, I started drinking in my teens and it took me until I was in my early 40s to finally understand that. You know, I wish people didn't have to go that far, but it takes us what it takes. You know, I had to get to the point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I finally was exhausted all my own brilliant thinking and brilliant solutions and just admitted defeat. You know, I said, I can't live this way anymore. I can't do this anymore. You know, I mentioned last week I was in an empty room watching a full bottle of vodka roll away from me on my knees, asking for help to something I didn't understand or believe in. But I just knew I couldn't live the way I was living anymore. And it was terrifying. I had no idea what was going to happen because I had no concept of what, you know, AA looked like or what a different life looked like. The only thing I knew was the life I was living. And one thing that I came up in one of my daytimer daily quotes that I really like is, you know, so we all fear change, but once it starts, we find it exhilarating. And that's what my life in this program is like. Once I started to make some changes, you know, the first thing was to get honest with the people around me, get honest with myself and say, hey, you know, I'm not okay. This is not sustainable. I'm not going to be able to beat this on my own. That's when everything started to change. You know, I got honest. I started asking for help, and I was amazed at the amount of help that was out there in all sorts of different ways. But the first thing is to have that change and just say, "Hey, I can't do this. I can't live this way anymore. I'm done. I'm defeated." And the rest is history. Yeah.
So this is now key concept number 7. And in a second, we're going to go around the room and we're going to do step 1. And this is key 7, that we admit that we can't take alcohol safely. Okay, got to admit that. And key point number 8, okay, guys, there's no mystery about Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a very planned step-by-step system to recovery. And that's providing you follow the instructions. It's a program. So the only thing that'll stop you from doing the exercises, basically, or the steps, is your own pride.
One other thing that I really like is, you know, that they say that AA, you know, some people say AA is a program full of suggestions, but it's not. It's a suggested program of recovery. You know, that's a totally different thing. You know, you don't get to pick and choose. Oh, I think like some people wanted to do, which is why she read steps the how it works for like 6 months, and so she finally understood that
Yeah,
there was an order to. But it's like, you know, it's a suggested program of recovery, and you've probably all heard the analogy. It's, you know, if you jump out of a plane, it's suggested with a parachute, it's suggested you pull the ripcord. You know, it's not a program of suggestions, it's a suggested program of recovery. So that's something definitely to take to heart. And with that, yeah. We're just gonna read through step 12,
Or
step
step
1
one.
in the 12 by 12. So
Who's got your 12 by 12?
if everybody
Sophie?
there has got them, maybe we can ask you guys on the screen to take a couple of paragraphs apiece and work the way through it.
Who'd like to kick us off? So step 1 again, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, dash, that our lives had become unmanageable.
I'm an alcoholic addict. I can read.
Perfect.
It's
Who cares to admit complete defeat? Practically no one, of course. Every natural instinct cries out against the idea of personal powerlessness. It is truly awful to admit that, glass in hand, we have warped our minds into such an obsession for destructive drinking that only an act of providence can remove it from us. No other kind of bankruptcy is like this one. Alcohol now become the rapacious predator, bleeds us of all self-sufficiency and all will to resist its demands. Once this stark fact is accepted, our bankruptcy is going human concerns is complete. Of going human concerns, please. But upon entering AA, we soon take quite another view of this absolute humiliation. We perceive that only through utter defeat we are able to take our first steps towards liberation and strength. Our admissions of personal powerlessness finally turn out to be firm bedrock upon which happy and purposeful lives may be built. We know that little good can come to any alcoholic who joins AA unless he has first accepted his defeated weakness and all its consequences. Until he so humbles himself, his sobriety, if any, will be precarious. Of real happiness he will find none at all, proved beyond doubt by an immense experience. This is one of the facts of AA life. Pass.
Alrighty, who wants to jump in at the top of 22? Who's got their book?
I will. I got it.
Ron's got it?
Ron has got it.
okay. Scary words, but okay.
Why are they scary?
I've got this. Scariest words you'll ever hear an alcoholic say.
Okay, Ron.
I don't understand.
Oh,
You
the
will.
Oh, you
the
will.
principle that we shall find. Start there, Ron, on 22.
Okay. The principle that we shall find no enduring strength until we first admit complete defeat is the main taproot from which our whole society is sprung and flowered. When first challenged to admit defeat, most of us revolted. We had approached AA expecting to be taught self-confidence. Then we had been told that so far as alcohol is concerned, self-confidence was no good whatever. In fact, it was a total liability. Our sponsors declared that we were the victims of a mental obsession so subtly powerful that no amount of human willpower could break it. There was, they said, no such thing as the personal conquest of this compulsion by the unaided will. Relentlessly deepening our dilemma, our sponsors pointed out our increasing sensitivity to alcohol, an allergy they called it. The tyrant alcohol wielded a double-edged sword over us. First, we were smitten by an insane urge that condemned us to go on in drinking, and then by an allergy of the body that ensured we would ultimately destroy ourselves in the process. Few indeed were those who, so assailed, had ever won through in single-handed combat. It was a statistical fact that alcoholics almost never recover on their own resources. And this had been true apparently ever since man had first crushed grapes. In AA's pioneering time, none but the most desperate cases could swallow and digest this unpalatable truth. Even these last gaspers often had difficulty in realizing how hopeless they actually were. But a few did, and these laid hold of AA principles with all the fervor with which the drowning sea's life preservers, they almost invariably got well. This is why the first edition of the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, published when our membership was small, dealt with low bottom cases only. Many less desperate alcoholics tried AA, but did not succeed because they could not make the admission of hopelessness. I'll pass.
Okay, Gord, you got it there? Start with it is tremendous.
Sorry, I'm just writing down admission and hopelessness. Court alcoholic.
Hey, Gord.
Hey, Gord.
It is a tremendous satisfaction to record that in the following years this changed. Alcoholics who still had their health, their families, their jobs, even 2 cars in the garage, began to recognize their alcoholism. This trend grew. They were joined by young people who were scarcely more than potential alcoholics. They were spared the last 10 or 15 years of literal hell the rest of us had gone through. Since step 1 requires an admission that our lives have become unmanageable, how could such people take this step? It was obviously necessary to raise the bottom the rest of us had hit to the point where it would hit them. By going back on our own drinking histories, we could show that the years before we realized we were out of control, that our drinking even then was no mere habit, that it was indeed the beginning of a fatal progression. The doubters, we could say, perhaps we're not alcoholic. To the doubters, we could say, perhaps you're not alcoholic after all. Why don't you try some more controlled drinking? Bear in mind, meanwhile, what we have told you about alcoholism. This attitude brought immediate and practical results. It was then discovered that when one alcoholic had planted in the mind of another the true nature of his malady, that the person could never be the same again. Following every spree, he would say to himself, maybe those AAers were right. After such few experiences, often years before the onset of extreme difficulties, he would return to us, convinced he had hit bottom. Convinced. He had hit bottom as truly as any of us, as John Barleycorn himself had become as our best advocate. Why all the insistence that every AA must hit bottom first? The answer is that few people will sincerely try to practice the AA program unless they have hit bottom. For practicing AAs, the remaining 11 steps mean the adoption of attitudes and actions that almost no alcoholic who is still drinking can dream of taking. Who wishes to be rigorously honest and tolerant? Who wants to confess his faults to another and make restitution for harm done? Who cares anything about a higher power, let alone meditation and prayer? Who wants to sacrifice time and energy in trying to carrying AA's message to the next sufferer? No, the average alcoholic, self-centered in the extreme, doesn't care for this prospect, unless he has done things in order to stay alive himself. Under the lash of alcoholism, we are driven to AA, and there we discover the fatal nature of our situation. Then and only then do we become open-minded to conviction as willing to listen as the dying can be. We stand ready to do anything which will lift the merciless obsession from us.
Thanks,
Okay.
Gord.
Thanks, Gord.